Hello, everyone, and welcome to this pre-conference session of AAC in the Cloud. We're really excited to welcome you to this particular presentation. This session has been compiled by Kelly Fonner, who has a lot of experience using AAC, but she has invited several moms of AAC users to share their tips and tricks about things they've learned as they have delved into the world of AAC with their own families, their own children, and people that they work with. There's a lot that we can learn from this particular session, so we hope you'll enjoy it. We will turn things over to Kelly, and she will introduce her guests. Thank you.
Hello, everyone from AAC in the Cloud. This is our pre-conference on tips from parents whose kids use AAC. My name is Kelly Fonner, and I'm going to be your host for these 4 presentations, and I'll do a little bit before and after to pull our kind of bookend this session together. So I'm going to start you off, tell you a little bit about myself, and each presenter along the way I'll introduce and they'll each tell you about themselves. Again, my name is Kelly Fonner. Thanks so much for joining us for this hour plus. Luckily, we're a pre-conference, so the time boundaries aren't as strict for us. My role in AAC has been many things over time. I started out as parapro in an Easterfields program with kids that had complex communication needs and a variety of challenges. I was also a teacher. I used instructional technology and assistive technologies. So I also became a consultant, an assistive technology consultant. I did training and consulting in classrooms. I worked in camps. I do presentations, many presentations, webinars. I drive a lot of places, lots of webinars like this one. But what really relates to this role is also I'm a family member of people who use a variety of assistive technologies. And one of them is my sister-in-law, Kay, who grew up having cerebral palsy and over lifetime, having been seated in a wheelchair for most of her life and how that impacts breath support, started to use a display like you see here when it became very difficult for people to understand her. And as a family, living AAC and living all the other things of powered mobility and feeding and all of the other kind of things that go through with a child and a young adult and an adult in their elderly years, we certainly know some of the things that you're going to be hearing today from these families. And more about my story as you go on. Some of the things that our family has learned and some of the things that I've learned by working families with my many different roles. I got started in, as I said, as a parapro, and these are the 2 of the young men and families who got me started with some of the tips that you're going to hear today. With Bob's family, he's the little boy at the top that I was assigned as a parapro to, and then later became an assistive technology support person too. But with Bob and his mom and sister, I really learned about perseverance. I learned that families really do know best for their own child. And for we, the related service people, we're there to support you. That you should be bringing all the resources that you know of together for your child. That there isn't just one resource that rules them all. That it is you to sort through, figure out what makes the most sense for your child and be guided by your own family values. And that brings in the little second cutie patootie that you see there, Mr. Alex, who I wish I had the second picture of him up there, of him as a young man at Villanova University. But one of the things that in Alex's family, when you came into their home, as I did, providing early childhood services in their home, and then continued to support them as he went on to a school in his family's community to support them with assistive technologies and all is that they had all of us read this book, Under the Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan. It's the very first thing that his dad handed us as we walked into their house. And he wanted everybody to read that because it really set forth the presumed competence that he wanted everyone to have with their son. The other thing in both of these families that I saw and in our family is that you involve all family members. It's not just the parents, but brothers and sisters are a part of this trip along the way because they too sustain the values, they too sustain communication for your child that uses an AAC system. And you're going to hear more from that from our moms today. So less of me, more about you and what you're going to be hearing from our tips from our 4 parents. You're going to be hearing from our parent of our youngest child first, from Nerissa, and then we're just going to kind of build our way from Nerissa to Leslie to Katie to Sue. I hope you enjoy us. Please give us feedback. We hoping to continue this kind of conversation on at the various conferences throughout the year. So thanks again for joining us, and thanks to the Cough Drop Company for sponsoring this. Hello, everybody at AAC in the Cloud. Here we go with our presentations from our very smart AAC sharing moms. First up here is Nerissa, and I'm going to turn it over to her so she can introduce herself. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nerissa, and I'm mom to Curran. He's a 5-year-old little boy, and he's a complex communicator. He has multiple complex disabilities, so we've got a lot going on. 2 years ago, I found out about AAC in the Cloud, and I tuned in and realized that we needed to be doing this. Very inspired by hearing Karen Owens share her journey, Kate Ahern, and that's when we decided to try Pod. And we've been using Light Tech Pod for the past 2 years, and we're getting ready to transition to a high-tech device. So that's us.
Well, we are so glad to have you here. And of the parents who are presenting today, this is really the first time that I've met Nerissa kind of in person. So I'm really excited because I know her from following her journey online. So this is her Facebook page, her Learning with Curran, and I've been following them all school year and very excited as the new units get posted and I can follow along, and I've been pushing some of my other homeschooling families and some of my classrooms to see what they are up to. And actually, it's not just about the learning things, but there's other movement things that they've been doing all year and the things that they do as a family. So she's got some really great ideas here to share with you. So enough of listening to me, and on to Nerissa. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you. Okay, so my top 5 tips, I think I actually cheated and ended up with 6, but the first one, to be successful, it's so important to be truly empathetic. to the AAC user. And I can't remember for the life of me which blog post I read, but I read a wonderful blog post like a year ago or so where a mom really tried to spend the entire day using her daughter's communication device and how frustrating it was. You know, there's so many things that you don't realize. Are you able to do your job? Are you able to make small talk in an elevator? Can you ask for directions? There's so many important parts to communication that get lost. So being able to put yourself in your AAC user's shoes and make sure they're able to do all of the important things, very important for success. And a robust AAC system should allow for all communication functions. And also just wanted to hit that it's never too early to expose your child to those modeling skills. You can start with AAC at any age. There's no prerequisite. So don't worry about that. Okay. This one is great too. Adults just aren't nearly as cool as children. Not nearly as meaningful to talk with adults all day long. So it's really important to get on the level with your child and think about what's important to that child and the peers around them. What are they talking about? What are the cool songs? What are the latest trends, the latest slang words, cool phrases? And does your child have the ability to talk about their interests and their motivating things and be relevant with their peers? Your child may already have other barriers, access barriers, or physical barriers. So the last thing that we want is to have an AAC system be another barrier for inclusion. So I had the privilege of going to ATIA last year, and one of the presentations talked about studying how AAC is used in school with peers and with adults. And they talked about a paper that showed that less than 5% of interactions were with peers alone without adults assisting. So that's really isolating, and it's so important to make sure that your children have opportunities to talk with peers. And these are just some pictures. This is it's Curran's older brother and his cousin, who's the same age as him, and I'm just amazed every time we pull our pod book out. We're waiting in a doctor's office. Kids are just naturally drawn to it, and they love to interact with it, and Curran gets the biggest kick out of meeting new people who are interested in communicating the way that he does. Okay, here's for some fun. So I saw on Instagram a quote that said, scientists have recently determined that it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in the brain, unless it is done with play, when it takes between 10 to 20 repetitions. So this is huge when you have kids that, it takes longer for them to make those pathways. Doing it when they're having fun and making it motivating is just going to make it that much more successful. So here's some goofy pictures of us doing some of our homeschool stuff where I'm hiding under the laundry basket. Curran's directing me and telling me where I need to go and what I need to do. Again, that's very powerful for kids that often have very little control over their environment. So he has a blast playing director and bossing me around. We've also got some examples of reading books and having puppets that we act things out, and we have some oversized dice that we put symbols on. So again, we roll the dice and we put the turtle on my head. looks really goofy, and it sticks and just makes it so much more meaningful. Also really important to be individualized to your child and identify the toys, the people, the shows, the songs that they like most, and then build opportunity for core words and other language around those things that mean the most for your child. Okay. So here's a nice, oh, we're at the hospital. Oh no. I really wanted to hit on this because my son was essentially nonverbal up until this year, where he suddenly had an explosion of verbal approximations and words. So for anybody who's concerned about AAC use hindering verbal communication, that's definitely not the case for us. And there's also research that shows that that's not the case as well. There's data that suggests AAC interventions can have positive benefits for natural speech production. So it also really helped me because we focused on AAC for several years, really worked on modeling, finding those powerful words, the words that were worth it, that he would get the most bang for his buck out of. And then as we started focusing on verbal speech, we were able to easily identify those powerful words that he, again, would get the most bang for his buck. So our AAC system has helped us to really understand and direct which way to go with his verbal speech. So we can go to the next one. So a lot of these ideas here, I think the oversized board came, and the pillows came from AAC in the Cloud last year. Again, I can't remember who it was, but there was a parent that gave a wonderful presentation on how you can include AAC across the environment everywhere. So we made the pillows, which is a wonderful way to make sure words are available all the time. We use our big communication board also during homeschooling. And then here I am with the various pod books that we've been progressing through over the past few years. Wanted to bring up that the power of a parent, and that a parent is the single most empowered force in a child's life and has the most potential for the most influence over decisions. So you really, it's a position of gratitude to be here and be able to influence and really pave that path for your child. The AAC community, it's phenomenal. There's so many professionals that are easily accessible, that have social media, Facebook, YouTube. I'm able to just consume information without ever meeting any of these people. There's local conferences, also great parent support groups too, that can help guide parents. And I think it's critical for parents to take ownership over the communication strategies. Make them yours. You know your child better than anyone else. You know what works and what doesn't. And if it's not a right fit, you have the power to change that. And I think it's also important to talk about how, as a parent, you set the tone for everyone that interacts with your child. So being optimistic and open-minded and presuming competence is really just going to trickle down to everybody that interacts with your child. And my last one, I snuck it in as its own slide because it really is so important to never underestimate your child's potential. And we just got back from a medical trip to Boston. We saw a doctor we saw a year ago, had some developmental testing done, and Curran has just jumped in his trajectory for problem solving. It's unexpected, but it's always been there. It's just hard to see sometimes. So keeping that in mind, that you're in it for the long haul. Don't get upset over the bumps. It's a bumpy road. As long as we keep looking to the horizon and looking to the future, moving forward, everybody deserves the chance to be able to communicate autonomously, and it's the greatest gift you can provide to your child.
Yay! Thank you so much. I've been doing a wrap-up for everybody so that they can come back through your great ideas. So number one, be empathetic. Number two, the importance of other children and peers. But I like to use the idea of friends and buddies. Only kids with special needs have peers.
Right.
3, make it motivating. Number 4, AAC does not stop verbal communication. And I love, love, love that you gave us the references that you have from different presentations that you attended. So many, because I know we're going to have parents that are attending this session, but we'll also have staff that are attending. And so many of us are often asked, how do you know that? Where does that come from? So giving us those quotes and those references are just terrific. The power of parent, I can't say enough about that. People are going to see my beginning and closing of this session, and I'm going to talk about my sister-in-law and how my mother-in-law was so very, very powerful and set the tone for our family, and how Kay was the most driving force in our family and her communication. And then, of course, never, ever underestimate any of your children's potential. Anything else you want to add?
I just want to say thank you, and this was really cool to come full circle, that AAC in the Cloud brought me in 2 years ago, and I'm honored to be a part of your presentation.
All right. Well, this is all of our presentation. Thank you so much, Nerissa. Thank you, Curran, for teaching us, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the future. Well, hello, everybody, again on the AAC in the Cloud conference. Here we are with another presenter. This is, I'd like to say, my friend and buddy and colleague and helper is Leslie Scan. So I'm going to have Leslie introduce herself and tell you how she got involved with AAC. Go ahead, Les.
Thanks, Kelly. Yes, what a great friend and teacher and supporter you've been to me. I appreciate it. You know how much I love you. So my name is Leslie Scahan, and I have a son named Mason, and he is an AAC user. Mason has a genetic disorder called Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, and he has complex communication needs, or to most of the world, this is also known as being nonverbal. Using AAC has helped with behavioral issues, which is very common in persons who are not able to expressively say their wants and needs. So this has been a great help for Mason. Also, we do a lot of self-talk, self-regulation, and we use that in his AAC as well. It's been very helpful. We started our journey with AAC in 2016. Our SLP at the time had mentioned POD, and I had been researching AAC as well. I had heard about AAC from another Pitt Hopkins family that lives here in Kansas, and they had seen a child use AAC and explained it to me and told me how amazing it was. So I researched the actually the person, the parent, got information from her, was doing my own research, and then we started using POD, which is a type of AAC. And then I attended the POD training with Kelly in 2017 and continued to research and make connections with others in the AAC world. So that's how we got started. We kind of live in a very small rural area, and so AAC is really not something you hear much of around here. And so I try to surround myself with those people to kind of keep it going, and have kind of found out that I'm spreading the word about AAC in our community, as well as within our Pitt Hopkins support group. So really excited about what it's done for Mason. So
well, I'm one that can attest to that. Leslie is very much one to be spreading the word. I'm going to start up her presentation here. She is my buddy who I get. So you have a picture here, you get an image here of Les and Mace, and a picture of his pod book that she'll probably talk some more of her AAC tips and hints from, but just so you see Mason here with her. She is my tips and tricks and quotes person that I get things from. And so I'm sure as she continues her advice here for you that you will get many goodies. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it back to Les.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. I put together a few tips for AAC on for whether it be a student or a family member or a child. The first tip that I have is to surround yourself with your tribe, or find your tribe. This may be, there's different support groups, there's social media, there is a ton of information and support on AAC. It's just finding it. It doesn't necessarily always come to you. You do have to kind of look for it. But even since we've started using POD, which is what Mason uses, it has really grown in the last few years as far as videos online that you can find, or finding other people who are POD users. So surround yourself with your tribe, or find your tribe. People who understand AAC and believe in the AAC user. This is what you want your tribe members to be. It's so important for the AAC user to have those people in his or her life modeling and speaking their language. This will also teach the AAC user that their AAC device has worth, which is very important. Number 2 is to simply do it. Throw yourself in and get started. Don't overwhelm yourself or the AAC user with high expectations at first. You'll feel like a failure, and you don't want to throw in the towel in altogether. So just go for it and stick with it. The third tip I have is to just keep going. There will be good days. There will be amazing breakthroughs, and those are great, triumphs and successes that you have to remember. And there will also be more trying times too. especially if it's a student or a child with complexities. It can be very overwhelming, especially when, for instance, medical issues arise unexpectedly. It's a part of life. So sometimes we get caught up in whatever issue that may come up that we were not planning for. And it's like, oh, we didn't talk about it, because we were, going to the hospital or, dealing with a seizure or whatever the issue may be at hand. But you can always talk about it later. Oh, yesterday you were sick and you didn't feel good and don't like that. But today, you're feeling better and, you can always go back and talk about it. We've definitely done this with Mason. And he's always very good about, shaking his head. Yes, like, yes, Mom. Yes, I know what you're talking about. And so that was number 3. Number 4, it may be awkward at first, but it will pass. Don't worry about what others think, others in public that are watching. You are simply communicating, and who knows what interest you may spark in someone watching and spread the word about AAC. I've had several people come up to us at ball games or strangers, oh, what is that you're doing? Or, I know somebody at my school that uses one of those. And so it's always neat to see people interested in what Mason is doing. So number 5 is to share the triumphs so that others, friends, family, teachers, and therapists can also see the impact of AAC on the child or the student. Many people can be very intimidated by AAC devices and think it's overwhelming or too difficult, but it is just like spoken language. We have to teach it. It has to be taught. And as infants coming into this world, it takes many months to express actual words. And this is the same with AAC. A person must be taught it, and we must model over and over. With Mason, he understands so much of what we say, but in order for him to communicate back to us his wants and his needs, we have to show him how to do that. And that's through modeling and teaching him how to do it. So that's what AAC is all about. And many people are stuck, many persons out there are stuck in these complex bodies. For instance, that's what my son, he understands very much. And it can be, frustrating for people who cannot get their wants and needs out. And they deserve to have their voice be heard. And so that's why I feel like AAC is very important, and it's definitely made a huge impact on Mason, and that's our end goal for him to be able to communicate what he wants, to whomever he wants at any time. So, that's why AAC is important to our family and to Mason. So,
and Leslie has this quote that she has up in their learning area in their homeschool.
Yes, I have it here.
Very good. Where I can learn, I am able, I can do it, and I deserve it. Very good. I'm always taking notes, and people know this from the other presentations that people have done. So I do a quick wrap up here. And also I'm going to show their Facebook page. So if you want to jump on and follow along with Mason, they have a public group called Mason's Milestones. So you can find and follow along with videos that they post and other things that Leslie posts, including her great quotes. But Leslie has talked about surrounding yourself with your tribe, modeling by simply doing it. Just keep going. It may be awkward at first, but I think so. I love this part, Les. Like, just do it in public, answer people's questions. We were at dinner last month, and the waitress came up and talked about her brother and, some event that she started for a summer event in her community to support people with disabilities in her community. And it was because she saw you and your husband talking with Mason with the book. And share your triumphs. Oh my gosh. I don't know what else to add to that. It's simply fabulous. Just really fabulous. I'm going to turn off the presentation. And thank you so much for joining us, Leslie. This is just great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Kelly. It was great to be on. I appreciate you asking.
Oh,
yeah.
You're very welcome. Hi, everybody from AAC in the Cloud. We've got another great interview here for you with Katie DeMar, and she's going to be sharing her strategies that help you have a powerful language for your child. But first off, let Katie introduce herself to you.
Hi there, my name is Katie DeMar. I am a proud mother of 3 little nuggets, 3 daughters. My oldest, who's right there on the photo next to me, we're laying on the trampoline there, is 12 years old, and her name is Brooke, and she is a proud user of an AAC system. And we are very grateful that we have it for her to be able to express herself. So Kelly asked me to talk about how I my foray into AAC. And I'll start by saying that so Brooke was born with traumatic brain injury, and so lives her life with a diagnosis of cerebral palsy and all that comes with that. So she has multiply layered disabilities, which made most communication systems pretty difficult to access. And I'm being generous by saying pretty difficult. But I think our first AAC system came to us when she was about 4 years old. It was a computer-based system. It was switch-based, and it was actually it was heading in the right direction in that it used a scanning system in order for her to access language. It ended up being too complex, and so we pretty quickly said goodbye to it, and then went into more basic choice-based systems, and eventually came to a system called POD, Pragmatic Organization Dynamic Display. I think I'm saying that correctly, but our POD system, which is, you can see it here in the photo on the left with Brooke and 2 of her buddies from her gen ed classroom at school. A really low-tech and absolutely amazing system that has given Brooke access to just a vast amount of language to let us know all of the bigger, huge things going on in her head that we didn't realize were going on before this system came to us. So that's my entry into the AAC world.
And I met Katie when she brought 2 of Brooke's staff members to a pod training that I was doing. And Katie's one of those people, she's got a lot of energy. So I'm going to turn that energy back onto her so she goes through her advice for you.
So it was pretty funny at this conference. The first day Kelly spoke, I kind of felt like she was a celebrity up there at the front of the room. And I went up and I asked her to go to dinner with me. So I just knew that she knew all the stuff that I didn't, and I wanted to know what she knew. And so I basically forged this relationship. I forced it on her. But we were very early on with our foray into POD, and I felt like I had to have all the right answers, which was in some ways, maybe Kelly was more of a counselor for me than in the learning process. But she really brought a lot to the table for Brooke and for our family and learning how to integrate POD into our language in our life. So I wanted to start with this idea of function over fancy, and it goes back to the beginning of our entry into AAC. What we realized really quick was with a fancy system, this computer-based, switch-based system that Brooke was given when she was 4 years old, that complexity only increased the barrier to entry for her. When I first saw the system Brooke uses today, I worried that we were taking a step backwards. Brooke right now she has a fairly good size. It's really thick, not super heavy, but a big spiral-bound book that I had to carry around. There are tabs and numbers and 101 pages. So my first thought was, what are we doing here? What I learned through the process, and what I learned pretty quick in the beginning, is that Brooke, needed a system that stripped away all of the barriers to access. So many kids with special needs don't have one-dimensional disabilities. That would be way easier, right? If there isn't easier to be had in all of this craziness. But that's not the case with my daughter, and probably most children that have complex disabilities. So Brooke needed something that would provide her with access to robust language, so a lot, right? So many words, but in a format that she could actually access. And there's very few things that do that. So in taking on the POD system for my daughter, and kind of in my mind at the time, maybe taking a step backwards, we were really taking huge steps forward because we stripped away all the complexity and we're back to a system that seemed, like I said, a bit archaic at first, but the simplicity gave her access to all of the complex and powerful language that allows her to tell us things we never knew were going through her head. And that's been enormously beneficial in the whole process. Okay, so next slide, we'll go on. So another big learning piece for me, and it really clicked as I learned about POD. I watched a lot of videos online, and one thing that hit me early on, and I can't exactly pinpoint when it happened, but when it did, it hit me hard, like one of those Oprah moments that everyone used to talk about, those aha moments. To teach communication effectively, it is critical that we give language to our children in a format identical to that which we want in return. So my middle daughter was in a total immersion Spanish program, and I kept asking her when she came home, like, how do you say cat in Spanish? And all these, she was so annoyed. I kept asking her things like that. She didn't come home with Spanish homework. She didn't come home with, this kind of stuff she had to memorize. But she was starting to be able to understand, the two guys in front of us in line. And it kind of hit me when we got POD that with any AAC system, we have to give them input in the same format we want to see on the out. And that, once I wrapped my brain around that, it was so much easier for me to understand how to help Brooke learn how to use this language. Like a big old light bulb went on. So that's another piece that I think is really critical to remember with any system. All right. So the next big aha moment for me is this idea of AMRAP. Okay, so I'm going to get a little personal here, so I hope this isn't too much. But so when we started using POD with Brooke, I was also in this place in my life where I was kind of coming out of a fog of sorts. I'd been marching through years of hard work as a mom to 3 kids, and clearly the oldest of which was born with traumatic brain injury. I wasn't a resentful person, but I wasn't super happy at that point in my life. I think at the time I probably thought I was, but really there was a lot I needed to work through. I was working tirelessly, and I kind of thought it was like my cross to bear in a way. I didn't realize how reactive I was being in life. Okay, so how this relates to AAC. So I started reading and listening to the right messages at the time. I backed away from people and messages that didn't fill me up and help me continue on the right course. As I went through this process and the fog cleared, I realized that the more I surrounded myself with the right messages, the more I could speak them and live them, and the happier I became overall, which is what I ultimately wanted, right? That was the goal. So back to AAC, so AMRAP. So it stands for as many reps as possible. So another way I like to say it is consistent repetition of the right things, right, that are aimed at reaching a goal that you've clearly set for yourself, and in this case, for Brooke and our family, and in relation to communication. So this AMRAP, consistent repetition, is how we build a muscle on our body. It's how we build a mindset in our brain. So as we taught the language of pod to Brooke, I tapped into this concept repeatedly. I told myself AMRAP. I would write it on Post-it notes and stick it on the cover as I walked out the door so I'd see it when I got back. And it helped me remember in the world of modeling to get in one more set and model one more conversation. We did it for a really long time. I'd like to say 6 months. It could have been longer, with very little back from Brooke. And there were moments of self-doubt and all of that. And I think there were moments when people wanted to see me like ease up on it because they felt like I was asking too much of our family and perhaps Brooke. But I had the goal, and I thought, we're not going to be any worse off if we don't hit this goal. We're going to get somewhere. It may not be what I have pictured, not that I really had anything pictured, but we're going to get somewhere, and it's going to be better than where we're at right now. So consistent repetition of the right things will lead to long-term success. And I think that many of us underestimate, what we can accomplish in a year, but we overestimate what we can accomplish in a week. This leads to us setting ourselves up for, and I'll say that again. So we underestimate what we can accomplish over the course of a year, but we overestimate what we can get done in a week. And so then we run around like crazy, hurry, scurry, work and worry, trying to accomplish these things. But if we actually just look a little bit more long-term and focus on the perseverance in it, it's amazing what we can accomplish. And I think that AAC is a marathon. And it goes back to the as many reps as possible. So if what I did is take that AMRAP philosophy and I put it towards AAC with Brooke, and we got there, and we're there. And there's still so much further to go, but it's happening, and it blows my mind that we got there, because there are points in time where it seemed so far off and like it was going to never really happen. So I think my husband likes to say that next level fun, the long-term stuff, the perseverance, that leads to that next level fun. Not like that immediate gratification fun, which feels really good in the moment, right? But is short-lived. It's the next level fun. And that's how language happens. And that's how AAC happens. So I wanted to make sure to share that with you. All right. So the next thing, and this is kind of my last, and then if I'm not sure if there's a way for Kelly. I think Kelly and I will talk at the end as well. But so as I went through all of this, I stuck this in at the end. So powerful language. Okay, so what is powerful language? So powerful is motivating, right? I had listened to SLPs and teachers for years with Brooke talk about power words, right? These core words, and they're so powerful. The words like no, all done, break, all of those words have a lot of power in them. And Brooke has been offered many core boards in her 9 years of special education. But what I've seen many of these boards, and many of you guys probably have too, but I realized really quick is for Brooke, these words were not motivating. So they might be powerful words for others to hear, but they weren't motivating for her to access. She had way more powerful ways to get these words across. So behaviors, maybe not ones that I love, but her behaviors got her point across so much easier than working through any kind of non-customized, difficult to access core board. So although they were powerful for us to hear, they weren't motivating for her. So really, how powerful were they, I guess is the point I'm making. What I think an AAC system needs to focus on is what's powerful for each kiddo. What's motivating for each kiddo so they are motivated to access language in this new format. For Brooke, this wasn't saying the word no. She can say that one. She can also say huggy, huggy when she wants a hug. But the things that have been super motivating for her, the things like saying, I like it, it's funny, or quick chat, I'm teasing you. This developed into something more complex and powerful over time. Communication like, let's see, I'm telling you something, next page, about how I feel, next page, scared. Another word, categories, descriptions, different. So Brooke told us that when a friend of hers from her gen ed class was coming over to play for the second time. Brooke told us she was scared. When we used Pod to tell her Lizzie was coming over, Brooke said, I'm scared, I feel different. That's powerful. And that's language I didn't know she even needed access to. So I'm so grateful that for a system that not only had that language in there, but that could strip away the barriers so that she could access it. Now, this didn't happen overnight. We're talking 3 years in, and maybe longer at this point. I'm not sure, but I think it's been about 3 years. But that was so powerful for Brooke and motivating for her to be able to communicate. And it took her a good 5 minutes to get that across, and a really smart partner that could be patient and give her basically reciprocate the patience that Brooke needed to trust in order to work through it to tell us that. And thank goodness she did, because then I could tell her and her nanny could say, hey, Brooke, we're all different, but your friend Lizzie and you are a lot the same. You both have curly brown hair, which we can say with Pod. You both have, you're both girls. You both like to play, you like music, activities, music, piano. So we could do all of that stuff in her language. And that is powerful because it's motivating. So I think that's all I had for you today. I'm super excited that I got to share that stuff with you, and I'm really, really grateful for the language that our daughter's been given through the system. Hey, Kelly, I think you're muted.
Thank you. Well, and how powerful. I didn't want to interrupt you at all, so that's what I did to myself. So I've been running through the notes that I've been taking. First of all, I now have AMRAP written in 3 different places around my desk. So that is up. It's my new acronym. So I've got number 1, function over fancy, for sure, total immersion. And as people listen to Katie, I hope you are bringing together all the lessons that you've learned about aided language stimulation, about modeling without expectation. You heard Katie talk about, the amount of time that they put in without that expectation that kids need to be immersed in the language of theirs, and hear and see other people speak their language. Number 3 was AMRAP, and I love that, as many repetitions as possible. And number 4, powerful, but making sure it's motivating. Anything else you want to add, Katie?
Oh, I feel like there's so much I could say about our journey thus far, but you said the modeling without expectation, and I didn't hit on that, and I'm so glad you did, because it was, it's kind of interesting. I think when people are quiet, even if they have language, like my dad's a really quiet guy, gosh, it makes people uncomfortable. And it's such an interesting thing to lean into that silence and allow time for processing and allow time for authentic communication on someone else's terms, taking all of your expectations and putting them aside. It takes a great amount of humility and self-control. And it's just that modeling without expectation is so critical. And I would think about when I would have, my second and third in their little bumbo seat on the counter, which you're not supposed to do, but I would do that while I was cooking. And I would talk to my kids and talk to them, and I would talk to Brooke and talk and talk and talk. And, they don't say anything back. They just kind of blow some spit bubbles and look at you cute. And you don't think for a second, well, I'm going to stop talking to you, right? So because you're not giving me anything in return, and it's so obvious, but yet it's so difficult when the language is different. And it's such a critical piece, and kind of being honest with yourself when you're getting it wrong, forgiving yourself and then getting it right the next time. I think forgiving ourselves when we're not our best with any communication system, but not letting that stop you from getting it right the next time.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that piece up.
Oh, sure. Actually, you said it in the most practical way. I just added language to it. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for giving us your time and adding so much to our presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be able to have done it.
Hello, everyone, with the AAC in the Cloud Conference. This is Sue Hipple, and I'm going to let her take it from there to introduce herself and the young gentleman that's there with her.
Thank you very much, Kelly. As Kelly said, my name is Sue Hipple, and this is Mike, my AAC communicator, and I'm married. I'm the mom of 2 boys. Mike has an older brother, Doug, and then there's Mike. Mike was born in 1995. There were complications at birth and eventually resulted in the diagnosis of cerebral palsy being made at 9 months. Because Mike was our second child, that diagnosis didn't change our approach. We exposed Mike to everything that Doug got exposed to. So Mike was exposed to all kinds of language. We read to Mike. His brother acted out lots of skits and plays for him, puppet shows for him. And of course, we talked to Mike all the time with the same expectations any parent had, that Mike understood everything that we said to him. Birth to 3 was involved when Mike turned 2 months old. And probably at the age of 2, we got introduced to the picture exchange system, and Mike teases in presentations he gives that we had pictures all over our house, which we did, and we had binders of pictures with family members in there. And we also used felt boards, and the felt boards, we used the pictures of people and the words and the pictures of words, and that's how we started from a very young age of Mike and I telling stories together. And I really think that was instrumental in Mike mastering language as quickly as he did and understanding sentences as quickly as he did, with all the storytelling that he did using the pictures of people, pictures of things, and then just words.
Terrific. Well, I'm going to give some more words over here to Sue. We're going to share a screen or two, and she's got some words of advice. And I'm sure maybe Mike might have some as well. As you hear a little bit more about their trip. I love this idea of the power of stories, and of stories leading their way through language. Okay, more of you, less of me.
Okay, so I guess one of our stories would be just our AAC story, and that would be one of persistence. Now, you guys have to remember, technology zooms quickly, and this was in 1998, 1999, so it was before iPhones and tablets and iPads, and technology was just really starting to take off. Mike got his first speech-generating device just before first grade, and we had a short trial with only one device, and I guess my guidance and advice to everybody else is not to do that because it was a huge mistake. We thought we had AAC mastered when we got that first device delivered to our house. The only problem was that it was all spelling based. Mike was a first grade kiddo who didn't like school and didn't like spelling, and it was a complete disaster. And we never thought Mike was the problem. We always presumed competence, that Mike would be able to communicate. We thought the problem was that we didn't pick the right device for Mike. So we had an AAC team that also believed in Mike's competence and that we just picked the wrong device. So we kept looking. Our AAC specialist went to Closing the Gap when Mike was in fourth grade. She learned about MinSpeak and the PRC devices. Mike had a trial with a PRC device, the Vanguard, and he was very motivated to try. The more success he had, the more motivated he was. And boy, he's on his fourth PRC device, and I can say that he is the chattiest, nonverbal young man you'll ever meet.
I agree to that. That's how I met Mike.
Yeah. So some tips that I have for AAC families are: try at least 3 devices. Make sure the trial period is long enough to give the communicator really time to use it. And ask those speech therapists and those sales reps to introduce you to some communicators that are already using that device and families that are using that device. Because I think families rock. We've always surrounded ourselves with other AAC families. And that kind of leads me to, one of my other tips. So I don't want to get too far into that. But the other thing we did was Mike used the device all the time. He used the device at mealtime. He'd be sitting in the kitchen with me. I love to cook and I love to prepare meals. So I'm in the kitchen a lot. He would be telling me ingredients. He would be, just any way I could involve him with his device, I would. And at the grocery store, too, we always had that device with us. I would be modeling as we're going through the grocery store. He would, we'd be in the fruit and vegetable area. He'd have his fruit and vegetables up, and I'd let him pick out what fruit and vegetables our family that we were going to eat that week. So I guess modeling, Mike's brother would model using the device, his parents, anybody who we could get to use the device, we did. And so we also wanted to, a tip is make using the device fun. We involved Mike's peers at a really young age, and we started something called Communication Buddies when Mike was in first grade. His good buddy Taylor would come over and they would play a game together on the device, and Taylor would just help him use the device and Taylor would model for him. And at parent-teacher conferences, I found out that Taylor was helping Mike's para-pro and his teacher when they got pulled away, or if they didn't know something on the device, Taylor would say, you know what, on Saturday when I was at Mike's house, this is what we did when this happened. And pretty soon the other kids found out about Taylor being our communication buddy, and we had 5 communication buddies. Everybody was signing up to come over to our house after school or on Saturdays. And those grade school kids are just fantastic. They absorb things. And that helped to really normalize Mike's device because, again, This was in the, early 2000s where, it wasn't so normal. So that helped really to normalize things. The other thing that it took us a while to accomplish this tip, but expose your AAC communicators to other AAC communicators. And we got an opportunity to do that when Mike went to an AAC camp for the first time. Because if you can kind of imagine that you're in a big grade school of 500 kids and you're the only one that uses a device, how lonely that could be. Right now our school district went from having Mike and Danny as their first communicators to over 90 kids that use AAC devices right now. So we're in a pretty big school district, but now they're not alone and they do have other kids, but it's so important, especially if you're in a small school district, you have the power of the internet to, connect with somebody online, or ask the speech therapist if there's anybody else in the school district that uses a device. And ideally, it would be a communicator that has a little more of a grasp of AAC and is further along than the younger communicator, because, how motivating it's going to be for them to see someone else use a device. When Mike was 12, he went to a camp for the very first time, and he just zoomed right in there with his power chair when he saw 17 other people using their devices, and it just was absolutely fantastic. So, there's camps all over the nation. For those folks in Wisconsin, there's Camp Chatter Matters. Keep that in mind. It's a wonderful camp. Another tip we have is develop your AAC community. So when we first started out, our AAC community consisted of Mike's IEP team. His IEP team was absolutely fantastic, but we needed more help than that. So we developed our AAC community by camp families. We keep in touch with most of our camp families, and they really are some of our closest friends today. But there's also another wonderful organization called United States Society for AAC, and we've developed by joining USAC, and I would encourage AAC communicators and their families to join USAC, because that's another way to expand your AAC family and sense of support by asking other parents, asking adult communicators were a huge source of help to us when Mike got into his teen years, other adult communicators. So that would be a tip I would have, as well as parents. Just any way you can get more knowledge about AAC, go to things like Closing the Gap and this conference. What a wonderful idea that you can participate in it, in your own home. Just absolutely fantastic. So parents to do all things like that, as well as I'm going to put a plug in for our local.
Any conferences to learn.
Yep. Any conferences to learn. I knew he wouldn't be able to be silent for very long. He would chime in with something. But in Wisconsin, we have Wisconsin AAC Network, and I'm very proud that Mike and a group of absolutely wonderful AAC advocates, Kelly being one of them, work very hard to communicate information throughout the state of Wisconsin. And we are lucky enough just to have a new website. So everybody everywhere else, come check out our website. It's full of lots of information. We started an AAC chat club, so communicators get together in a social setting to communicate with each other, as well as to show everybody what communicators can do. So of course, my top website would be wisconsinAACnetwork.org, as well as USAC's, USSAAC.org as far as their website.
Terrific. All right. Well, that's just a whirlwind of advice. I'm going to do a quick wrap up because I'm always taking notes with everybody. So I love the idea of persistence, multiple trials, presumed competence, meet other AAC families, use the device all the time, model, model, model wherever you are at, make it fun, communication buddies, expose AAC user to other AAC communicators through camps, and you'll find many of the companies have links to the AAC camps. You can find that, and then websites like the Wisconsin AAC Network and USAC and others. So any last words before we wrap up this portion of our AAC in the Cloud presentation?
I guess my last word is a challenge out there to speech therapists in that, or family members, but maybe speech therapists. I want you to think of a student that you maybe tried AAC with once and they just didn't seem to take off. I guess I challenge you to try again, because Mike's team, really, nobody would have blamed them if they would have given up on Mike in first grade, second grade, third grade, or fourth grade, because he certainly had lots of opportunities. But what a wonderful communicator we would have lost. And he's connected with so many people that they wouldn't have had the opportunity to connect with him. So, just don't give someone just one try, one and done with communication. Just keep at it. There's a device out there and an access system out there for everybody.
All right. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Mike. All right. This is a great way to start us off. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Okay, everyone, there's hardly anything left to say. So I'm going to wrap it up with some last words, some resources, and definitely some big old thank yous to everyone that's been involved here in this pre-conference session for AAC in the Cloud. First off, connecting with your tribe, your people, places to get some more information, to do some research. If you don't know of, if you haven't joined USAC, our United States Society for AAC, they've got a great Speak Up blog with continuing information. There are usually quarterly informational webinars. You can get information without joining, but please do considering joining us. So that's at usac.org. You can find that information, like if you're in a natural disaster and your child loses their communication system, and how to get that replacement, and how to find and link up with people that know more about AAC here in the U.S. and in other countries. The CP Foundation, even if your child doesn't have cerebral palsy, they have an expert video series on communication, on inclusion, on looking at situations in the community, and family resources. So check out the yourcpf.org expert video series. Another video series with webinars that's ongoing monthly, live and then recorded, is AbleNet University. AbleNet supports through free webinars, and you can take a look at those information, sign up for them. Again, you can watch them live, or you can sign up for them and get the information to watch them later. We can't say enough thank yous for what Carol Zangari has done with the Practical AAC site, where you can go and get information. You can sign up and get that information sent to you daily. There's a daily sent of video. You can get the link up to discussions. There's a Pinterest site with pictures of things and ideas, and just do a search. I mean, at this point, there are years and years of how I do it guest host posters. I have to say that slowly. Another place that has guest host posting is the Communication Matrix Forum. Many people know the Matrix as a resource for a free expressive communication assessment to assess skills from birth to 24 months expressively, but people don't always know that there is a forum of discussion that goes on around skills, AAC, and other communication strategies. We've had parents posting, professionals in the field posting, and just a variety of people. Over the last month, I have been putting together a collection online there with Facebook pages, YouTube channels, blogs of parents who have been posting their video, photo, and just blogs of their child's journey through this complex communication situation that they find themselves in. And just one other resource for live chatting is through Temple University in Philadelphia, and what Diane Bryan and her team have put together over many years with the Augmentative Communication Users Online group. You can sign up for it. We've given you the link here. And you'll find out more information and chat with people who really know it because they are living in it every day. If you want more research-based types of information, here's just a little bit of information that you can get off of the RERC site that I gave you in the beginning piece of information. But the building capacity in AAC, the research on personal centered planning from McNaughton and Light and Buchelman and Klein and Nider and Nazareth. There's a really great link here to their article. And can't say enough about Kathy Howery and what she's been doing as she's gathered information from the books and articles and journals that have been written by the AAC communicators themselves. And Dr. Howery's put that information together in these two journal articles. She's presented at conferences, just as many others have, and presented in many forums and made her information accessible to us. So check that out. Lastly here, we have a personal family friend who wrote this for her parents. She's a woman, our friend, Sally Brown, who was born with cerebral palsy. I've given a link to this handout in full. Please, if you use it, give Sally full credit. I've pulled out the 10 top meaningful parts of it, which is the 10 things I wish you knew, a note from a special kid to special parents. And just if I can go through and get through these 10 things that Sally had to say to her mom and dad, and I think that it will bring forth many of the points that were made to you today in the 4 speakers previous here. 1, you are the perfect parents for me. This is the perfect life for me. I need you to find your own spiritual path. However you feel about me is okay. However I feel about my disability is okay. Let me want to try, even if you are sure I will fail. Don't worry about my whole life today. Sometimes people will be mean to me or scared of me. I expect you to stick up for me, but I do not expect you to change the world. Finding good doctors and professionals is important, but you know me better than they do. I expect you to trust your own instincts about what is good for me. And lastly, I really hope we laugh. I love that. Wrapping up, thank you to Katie, Leslie, Sue, and Nerissa, and most importantly here, thank you for our sponsors, the Cough Drop Company. Peace out.